Hey, happy Friday. I know Baldur's Gate is out right now and I'd rather be playing that as well, but here we are, we have to be responsible and talk about the tech news. So this week the house of Mickey Mouse was set on fire, the IPO of ARM got all the big tech giants very excited, and Germany apparently is getting a TSMC chip fab. It's finally happening. Welcome to the Friday Checkout. This video was sponsored by Brilliant. Okay, this week we start the brief with the Xiaomi Mix Fold 3, which got a new launch date of August 14th, and a new teaser video showing off the thin and light design, plus the 4 Leica branded cameras too. Hopefully these are going to be our first really good cameras on a foldable. LG, meanwhile, released a new OLED M series of TVs this week, which weirdly don't have any physical ports on the actual TVs. Instead, they have a separate box to plug cables into, which then connects wirelessly to the TV. Kinda weird. Next, the real-life folding test that I mentioned last week showed that the Samsung Galaxy Flip 5 survived over 400,000 folds for about a week of continuous abuse before dying, so that is pretty crazy. They even folded it underwater, in high temperatures, on ice, covered in flour and eggs, etc. This is obviously just a single device tested in a very specific environment, but given that the original folding phones were only rated up to 100,000 folds in a lab environment, I guess things are getting better. Then, also this week, Google teamed up with American Airlines to test helping pilots pick routes that create fewer condensation trails by avoiding humid zones. This was done because those streaks of white trap heat that is reflected from Earth, kind of like clouds, which the company says actually accounts for about 35% of the aviation industry's global warming impact. Google says that they were able to reduce those impacts by more than half while only increasing fuel consumption by about 2%, so I guess that's a win. Next, Instagram this week unexpectedly announced that for the first time ever, it would support a proper tablet mode. The app finally officially runs in full screen mode by default, it has proper sidebars and everything, and it went from a derpy mess to everything being laid out mostly correctly. The catch though, at least for now, is that this version is exclusive to the Galaxy Fold line. The Pixel Fold and other Android tablets do not get this version, at least for now, and even the iPad still only has a weird windowed iPhone app. I gotta hand it to Samsung that despite me being annoyed with the slow iterative approach that they're taking to their hardware on foldables, their foldable software is still kind of the best in my opinion, and they're the only company that are able to convince third-party developers to port their stuff over to the screen form factor, so I guess I'm just gonna stick with them. And next, over in New Zealand, an AI meal planner app cheerfully recommended increasingly bizarre recipes, including an Oreo vegetable stir-fry, before going even further and recommending a chlorine gas recipe, which it called, quote, aromatic water mix, suggesting to serve chilled and enjoy the refreshing fragrance. Nice! And of course the company said, it's the people, they were using it incorrectly. It's not their problem, it's not their fault. And this is just another reminder that maybe you shouldn't trust the AI with your life just yet. Okay, and for my first story of the week, tough times are coming for Disney, to which they are reacting with price hikes, password sharing crackdowns, less content, and more ads. Great. So this week, for the second time in about a year, Disney unveiled a round of major price increases to its streaming products, raising the cost of the ad-free versions of Disney Plus and Hulu by more than 20% each. It's actually pretty wild. Disney Plus with no ads will now cost $14 a month, up from $8 less than a year ago, and even a basic Hulu subscription will now cost $18 a month, which weirdly makes this the most expensive streaming service out there when comparing basic tiers across the board. Meanwhile, Apple TV Plus with no ads is somehow the cheapest. Those are some major changes, and they're announced together with an intention to actually start cracking down on password sharing on Disney Plus as well, just like Netflix did on their service, because the company actually started losing subscribers. The service has lost 7.4% of its user base in a year, its biggest single drop yet, and so by forcing people to give up their shared passwords, they hope that they can turn things around by getting freeloaders to finally subscribe. Disney Plus was supposed to be this incredible success story that was eating up the whole industry, but I guess the endless growth is finally over, and just like everybody else, they're also now starting to have to focus on profitability instead. Meanwhile, all the huge franchises that Disney bought, like Star Wars and Marvel, seem to have kind of run out of steam, and none of them even made it to any of the major top 5 charts this year. Disney's streaming operation lost $512 million last quarter. The company is also losing linear TV subscribers for things like ESPN, which it owns, and it's actually considering selling some of its TV assets. ESPN even decided to get into sports betting as well to make up for its slowdown, despite Disney historically being very anti-gambling. Disney is still a massive corporation, so they're not exactly going to fall over and die anytime soon, but they have performed really poorly across the board, so they have started to penny pinch, which for you and me means that we get less stuff and we have to pay more for it. Well, I mean, I won't, because I couldn't care less about Star Wars and Marvel and whatever, but I think you get the idea. Okay, and for my second story of the week, ARM is finally going to IPO next month, apparently, and all the big tech giants really want in. So as SoftBank, the current owner of ARM, is finalizing their initial public offering onto the American Nasdaq, news is breaking that the likes of Nvidia, Apple, Samsung, Intel, and Amazon are all aiming to buy up stocks in ARM as soon as it hits the market so that they can become cornerstone investors and so that they can have some control over the company. All of those companies make chips using ARM technologies, so they're massively reliant on this tech and they really want to make sure that they have some influence over it. Only a couple of obvious players like Qualcomm are missing from the list of wannabe investors, but maybe we just haven't heard of those yet. And meanwhile, experts are expecting that this demand might push ARM's valuation to around $60 billion, which would be way more than the 40 or so billion that Nvidia wanted to buy them for. So it's clear that ARM has a lot of value to a lot of different companies that go far beyond just the profits that it can generate. Okay, and for my third story of the week, after Intel said that they'd build a massive chip fab in Germany, now TSMC has basically said that they'd do the same. So TSMC's investment into a new fab is planned for over $11 billion, and the company aims to build the facility next to the city of Dresden. This will be run by a joint venture with Bosch, Infineon, and NXP, Europe's 3 largest native chip companies, who will co-own the fab with a 10% stake each in a kind of unusual way, and meanwhile the factory will be spitting out chips using older processes like 28, 22, 16, and 12 nanometers. There is multiple generations behind the bleeding edge that, for example, Intel is trying to do here in Germany, but at least TSMC's factory will apparently focus on building automotive and industrial chips, which are exactly what the German economy needs for the most part. Dresden is already home to a bunch of chip fabs from global foundries to X-Fab, as well as Infineon and Bosch, and it was also the center of the old East German chip industry before the fall of the socialist system. So if both the TSMC and the Intel fabs actually happen, then Germany could theoretically become kind of a chip-making powerhouse all of a sudden, and emphasis being on could, because there's actually quite a few things to be skeptical about. First, 15 billion euros are given to TSMC and Intel in forms of various subsidies, which is likely Germany's largest corporate handout in history. This is the equivalent of every single German person paying 180 euros to these companies. These companies that are gigantic, highly profitable, not even European, and might just end up leaving the country as soon as the subsidies dry up. Now, I think the fact that TSMC is building a joint venture with local partners is somewhat reassuring, and their focus on automotive chips does make a little bit more sense for the European context than Intel's fabs, which will mostly just build chips for exports with very few European buyers. The European goal, of course, is to have chip independence, which is a noble goal to have indeed, but here too you have to be a little bit skeptical. All of these fancy fabs actually rely on thousands of critical suppliers from around the world, any of which can hold production and shipment from one day to another, regardless of the fabs themselves having been moved to Europe, so a lot of dependence will still exist despite the fabs themselves being here. Now, I don't want to be too negative, because if managed well, these deals could become a very positive thing for the European economy, but that's a big if, and I really hope that they are. Now, if being so valuable that the richest countries in the world are willing to create the largest subsidy packages that they can possibly come up with just to get you to come over is a position that you'd like to have yourself, then maybe you should consider becoming an engineer. And with Brilliant, you can learn to become one online in a way that is both effective and fun. Brilliant is the best online platform for learning STEM skills, including science, engineering, maths, computer science, and more, and their special sauce is designing really high-quality courses with interactivity in mind. So they take complicated sciencey topics like quantum physics and machine learning, they break each of those down into many smaller chunks, they arrange those so that you can actually progress from beginner levels to advanced ones in little sprints, and they make you practice what you've just learned in each course with a practice exercise at the end. This interactivity is not just way more fun than simply reading books or watching a video, it also switches your brain from a passive mode into an actively participating mode, so you can retain knowledge a lot better. Brilliant has thousands of lessons covering tons of STEM STEM topics, and new lessons get added every month, so whatever STEM skill it is that you want to get better at, they probably have you covered. You can get a 30-day free trial at brilliant.org/TFC, and the first 200 people who sign up using that link will also get 20% off their annual premium subscription. So check them out, happy learning, and I'll see you next Friday.